Now, we had a great show Sunday, and I want you to hear some of this on the Fox News channel. Not because of me, but because of the guests. Andy McCarthy, who you've come to know from this program over the decades, and David Limbaugh, who you've come to know from this program over the decades. I mean, they're both independently known anyway. They're great writers and speakers and so forth. So I thought, let me have them both on together with me. They're also two of my best friends. And let's discuss what's going on with Trey Gowdy, with Comey, with all the rest of it. So let me give you a little taste of what took place Sunday. I hope you're able to watch the show. It's only once a week. It's only for an hour. When you call out the commercials, it's really only for 40 minutes, give or take. This is from Sunday, yesterday. Cut 14, go.
We hear media outlets and others say, well, first of all, it's not a spy, and second of all, the FISA is not a big deal, and thirdly, of course, we needed to get to the bottom of this Russia thing. What's the big deal? Trey Gowdy said this is exactly what the American people would want from their FBI. How do you respond to that?
I don't think so. I think, Mark, all of the back and forth about whether it's a spy or an informant is really beside the point. When I was a prosecutor, the informants worked for us. So when I spoke to the jury during a case, I would call them the informants. And then the defense lawyers would get up and speak to the same jury about the same guys and call them the spies, the snitches, the finks, whatever. They're government-controlled, covert operatives who you send in to get information, regardless of what you call them. And the important thing always is why you sent them in, not what you call what they're doing, whether you want to be hyperbolic or use euphemisms about it. And I think, with all due respect to Congressman Gowdy, I don't think the American people would be happy with the idea that the norm we've had in this country, I think from the beginning of this country, but certainly in the modern era since Watergate, that the incumbent administration does not use the awesome counterterrorism and law enforcement powers that it has to monitor the opposition party in an electoral campaign is a norm the American people would like to keep in place. And Gowdy is simply wrong when he says that the object here was to monitor the activities of a few tangential players that had kind of tenuous connections to the Trump campaign. It was said explicitly in congressional testimony a number of times by former Director Comey that the FBI was conducting an investigation of the Trump campaign for coordinating in Russia's cyber espionage operation.
Wasn't Trey Gowdy among those members of Congress on the committee listening to the testimony firsthand of Mr. Comey?
Yeah, he certainly was. In fact, the best-known testimony is the testimony Comey gave on March 20th of 2017, which is important because it's the jumping-off point, as it turns out, for Mueller's, Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. This is what Mueller took over. And what Comey described was a counterintelligence investigation aimed at Russia's interference in the election and the extent to which the Trump campaign was suspected of coordinating in that effort.
Mm-hmm. He has an exceptional way of communicating things, doesn't he? And you know who else does? David Limbaugh. And you know him as a great columnist as well. And he makes a point. Well, if they had all this information as a basis for having a spy in the Trump campaign to check up on the Russians, then what's with the dossier being used for the FISA application? Why did you need that? Cut 15, go.
The focus is the Trump campaign. All of a sudden we're hearing, no, it's just an investigation of the Russians. So where's this argument coming from? Is it because they've now been caught or they've had to confess some of these activities that have been taking place?
Well, it sure is very suspicious. We all start out with a presumption that the FBI and DOJ are honorable institutions, and we being conservatives, we support law enforcement apparatus, and that's our bias, until we see things that concern us. I think we need to remember at the outset that liberals, by and large, our ends justify the means. They politicize things. They're willing to, and not willing, they're anxious to subordinate the rule of law to their political agenda. That's what makes a lot of this stuff believable. Obama weaponized the IRS to target conservatives. He politicized the EPA to a disgusting extent. We can even go back to Bill Clinton putting Bill Land Lee in the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, and all that activism occurring in the very institution that is supposed to be objective and keep justice honest. So I start off with that presumption. Then you look at all the things, regardless of whether Trey Gowdy, who I have respect for, of course, regardless of whether there was a technical spy or informant in the campaign, regardless of whether they have convinced him that they weren't investigating Trump, then why did James Comey go out of his way, make a fool of himself, a jerk of himself, an unprofessional person of himself, to leak, to start a special counsel investigation? You don't have special counsel against Russian entities. You have special counsels to investigate higher-ups in the executive branch, i.e. the president. That's the explicit purpose of it. So why did Comey leak to start that? Why was it necessary, if what Trey Gowdy says is true, and I'm not saying anything he says is not true, but I'm saying in terms of how he's emphasizing this, why did they need to dummy up the FISA application? If they had a bunch of stuff to make them suspicious about Trump campaign and the FBI, why did they use the dossier, which was all bogus? 50% of it wasn't even corroborated. And we all know that it's the litany of facts about it being prepared by Steele and these people and paid for by the Clinton campaign. They would go out of their way, if they were being neutral and really going after the Russians, they would go out of their way not to present that to the court. And then if they did present it to the court, they would disclose to the court that Steele had been fired as an informant by the FBI, that it was funded as opposition research by the Clinton campaign. They would have made all those connections, but they didn't. And so you have to wonder why. Why did they lie about the redacted material? Why did they play hide the ball? Why did they leak? Something is not right, and that's what makes us suspicious. Even if some things were right, there's still a bunch of things wrong, notwithstanding what Trey Gowdy said.
Now, cut 17, Andy McCarthy on Mueller is an unguided missile. Cut 17, go.
Comey's fired. Comey leaked. Soon thereafter, we get a special counsel appointment by Rod Rosenstein. The Democrats were pressing for a special counsel appointment. Chuck Schumer was pressing from day one for a special counsel because they know how these guys or gals get carried away with themselves. Was the appointment of Mueller based on any criminal statutes or based on any rational basis other than go investigate this stuff?
No, I don't think so. I think he's an unguided missile. I mean, the appointment was outside, and to my mind, flouted the regulations that govern when the Justice Department can have a special counsel. So the regulations say that you're supposed to, as the Justice Department, articulate what is the basis for a criminal investigation that the Justice Department is conflicted from investigating in the normal course. And the factual basis, the articulation of that, is what is supposed to become the parameters of the jurisdiction.
So a statute, a person, a group, something. He's not just this general prosecutor looking at stuff.
Right. And instead what they did, Mark, and this harks back to Comey's testimony that we talked about before the House, they assigned to Mueller a counterintelligence investigation, which is irregular because in the Justice Department, counterintelligence investigations don't get prosecutors. The design or the aim of such an investigation is not to build a criminal case. It's to divine the actions and intentions